Good morning, Jody. Good to see you again.
Lovely to see you. So, your thoughts on last night, and especially what Cheney said about pardon seekers.
I thought it was pitch perfect. It was a great opening statement, not unlike one we would give in a RICO case. I will say I'm more convinced than ever that we will see a large, overarching conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States indictment. I don't know when, and I'm not saying we should see it tomorrow, but I'm more convinced now than ever that we will see it. And going right to that Liz Cheney clip, the members of Congress who sought pardons for their role in the insurrection have already confessed their crimes. That is evidentiary manna from heaven for prosecutors, because you don't ask for a pardon unless you know you've committed a crime, right, and you need protection. You need a way to wiggle out of it. And who do you turn to for that pardon? Your virtual co-conspirator, Donald Trump. Those are admissions of guilt that are as powerful as when a suspect sits down with the police after being arrested, after being Mirandized, and confesses to their crimes. So if that does not provide evidence of a large overarching conspiracy in the Republican Party, I don't know what does. And an indictment will not be about politics.
Right.
It will be about asserting the rule of law and protecting our democracy so this never happens again.
Absolutely. And you tweeted out that Tim, is it Heaphy or Heffy?
Tim Heaphy.
Heaphy is going to be, he's going to be asking questions. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so
and you know him,
Tim
correct?
Heaphy. Yeah, Tim Heaphy and I worked together. We started together at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. We worked the same mega RICO case together, and he is probably the best RICO prosecutor I ever had the pleasure of working with in my career as a federal prosecutor. He was tapped to be the chief investigative counsel for the January 6th committee. So I have seen, as the evidence developed, what looked to me like the blueprint of a RICO investigation being conducted by the J6 committee. That's courtesy, I believe, of Tim Heaphy's work as chief investigative counsel and the entire team that he assembled who have been working behind the scenes, because they're all former federal prosecutors with expertise in public corruption cases, RICO prosecutions, and violent crime prosecutions. This is why I've been comforted, Jody, all along, knowing that basically you have an investigation being run by former federal prosecutors. It's just being run in a very unorthodox place in Congress.
Right.
But it's also going on behind the scenes at the Department of Justice. So once those 1,000+ transcripts are turned over to the DOJ that the J6 committee has created, it's on. I'm sorry, it's on.
Yeah, because you wrote an article about how sometimes DOJ wants the first bite at the apple, but with Iran Contra, obviously there was a problem because immunity was given to certain people by Congress versus hey, don't do that. So do you think what's happening now is like, don't give immunity to people to testify before we get a bite at them? Is that what you think is happening?
Jody, that's a perfect example, because I think that highlights the fact that there has been coordination behind the scenes between the J6 committee and the Department of Justice, which is not inappropriate, unlawful, or unethical.
Right.
It's smart. It's tactically savvy, because, look at Iran Contra. Congress, in its zeal to get testimony from Oliver North, gave him immunity. And what ended up happening? The DOJ, after that, indicted him, tried him, convicted of, I believe, 3 felony crimes. And then it went up to the appellate court and it got busted. It got reversed on appeal, Oliver North's conviction, because, among other issues, the appellate court said, hey, Congress gave him immunity. He testified and incriminated himself, but because of the immunity, that can't be held against him. And you know what? We're worried that some of that information crept into his criminal trial and was used against him.
Right.
So they busted Oliver North's conviction, and he never did get held accountable for his crimes. Guess what? You know how many people Congress has granted immunity to in the J6 investigation? Zero. And that's a smart move.
Yeah, I think that happened with the Cosby case too. He was granted immunity in his civil deposition, and that's why he's no longer in prison. So we need to learn.
Yeah, and that one was a real travesty. That one, because I don't even agree with the appellate court opinion that stripped his conviction away from him. That was not a well-founded opinion.
But I mean, that was the same argument, I would assume. How do you think things are going to go on Monday? Because they gave us a little bit of a preview. And you said earlier, before we were on air, about Republicans testifying via video this early. I agree with you. That was kind of incredible to see Bill Barr, number one son, up there.
One of the things that surprised me is last night, the clips that they chose to show, right? They put on 2 live witnesses, and we can talk about them. But the videotape testimony they chose to show was largely Republicans who were incriminating Donald Trump, which I think is a very smart move because it at least draws some of the politics out of it. I did not expect to see Bill Barr as the first video witness in last night's hearing. But when he said Donald Trump's claims of election fraud were bull S, and I told him so. Right from jump, Jody, when we heard that clip, that what that does is it proves Donald Trump's corrupt intent, his criminal mens rea, his guilty state of mind. That's just 3 ways to say the same thing. And it's something we have to prove in court. It's already been proved. So let's get this indictment show on the road. But it was not only Barr, it was Jason Miller and Mark Shore and that Republican pollster who told Donald Trump, "You're losing, sport. Get over it." I mean, they reinforced that over and over with Republican voices, not with Democrats.
Right.
And then the icing on the cake is Ivanka, his daughter, who says, "I don't believe my father." I'm paraphrasing because what she said was, "I believe Bill Barr.
Yeah.
My father lost."
Yeah.
What is that? The next sentence, had she opted to say it, would have been, "My father's a great big liar." I mean, Donald Trump is done. This is just going to be a very long process by which they will reveal all of the evidence to support last night's opening statement, and then it will be time for DOJ to do its thing.
The police officer that spoke last night was heart-wrenching to me, what she went through. First, she gets knocked out and has a traumatic brain injury that she's still recovering from, has to watch all of that again, so the PTSD, you could see it in her eyes. And then to get up and do her job after that horrid injury, she was right saying it was adrenaline. It was heartbreaking, and I'm glad that first off, she's quite attractive, which doesn't hurt for television. But, I mean, what did you think of her testimony, and especially with her being with Officer Sicknick at the moment that he turned pale? I mean, that was just, for the GOP to say that they're the party of law enforcement, to me, bye-bye on that talking point. What did you think?
Yeah, so this is what angered and enraged me the most. And I think it's the only tweet I sent out last night while I was watching, because I really wanted to focus on what was going on. The fact that Officer Edwards engaged in hand-to-hand combat with Trump's angry mob, the insurrectionists he sent to the Capitol to stop the certification that day, she had to fight with them for hours. She had to fight with them after she was revived because she was thrown to the ground, hit her head on the concrete, blacked out, had a concussion. She still got up and continued to fight with them in what she described as hand-to-hand combat with hours. And not to get too graphic, but we saw it last night. She said she saw her fellow officers beaten, bloodied, unconscious, on the ground, throwing up. And she was slipping. She couldn't keep her feet grounded because she was slipping in their blood as she fought Trump's angry supporters. And what we learned last night is Trump refused to place a single call for hours and hours and hours to send reinforcements to defend the Capitol. Mike Pence had to do it.
Right.
And he's not a hero, but he did it. He at least called in reinforcements to defend the Capitol. Donald Trump is the one who caused Officer Edwards to fight in hand-to-hand combat for hours, slipping in other officers' blood. That is on the hands of Donald Trump. That's one of the many reasons he has to be held accountable.
I agree. In fact, we can listen to her testimony on that 20.
Okay.
It was heart-wrenching.
What I saw was just a war scene. It was something like I had seen out of the movies. I couldn't believe my eyes. There were officers on the ground, they were bleeding, they were throwing up, they had, I saw friends with blood all over their faces. I was slipping in people's blood.
It's just, I watched it, but just listening to it too is it's you can hear the stick in her throat, trying to keep it together, and she did. Oh my God! And the other officer that was there that didn't speak last night, he was crying.
Yeah.
And obviously Sicknick's family was there.
Yeah, right behind her.
And Jody, all the while, Donald Trump is sitting in the White House dining room, watching gleefully.
Yes.
That's what the witnesses have said, and rewinding to the good parts. And I guess to Donald Trump, the good parts is when his insurrectionists were giving the Capitol Police officers an especially good beatdown.
Yeah, and for any of them, it's including Donald, to talk about crime in this country when that, to me, the ultimate crime against this country was what happened on that day and leading up to that day especially. And Donald did throw his lovely daughter under the bus this morning on Truth Central.
Truth Central.
He calls her Ivanka Trump, which is hilarious. I find that to be one of the funnier things that he said about her. And it was just a brief thing on how she believed Bill Barr. I figured that he was going to do that, and then he's just going to say, I never knew her. She just brought him coffee a couple of times. She's his new coffee person. Yes, Travis.
Oh, I was also going to say, we also heard some video of that arrogant little prick, Jared Kushner.
Oh, yeah, we could play
What did you think of that moment? Or actually, let's play. That's
19,
clip number 19.
yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Jared, are you aware of instances where Pat Cipollone threatened to resign?
I kind of, like I said, my interest at that time was on trying to get as many pardons done. And I know that, he was always, him and the team were always saying, oh, we're going to resign. We're not going to be here if this happens, if that happens. So I kind of took it up to just be whining, to be honest with you.
Oh, my God.
We've silenced you.
We have. You've been sending
So when a White House counsel threatens to resign because the president's trying to unlawfully overturn the results of a presidential election, and the person closest and perhaps most influential to Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, at least that is how he has been portrayed over the years, he and Ivanka, but even more so Jared, because, he was a policy guy, which is laughable. And when he says, look, I just took that as whining because my focus was on getting as many pardons issued, in part to shut up Donald Trump's co-conspirators as I could possibly get out before the end of Daddy-in-law's term. The reason I was so happy to see that is because, one, it helps explain why none of the adults who remained at the White House could break through to Donald Trump and convince him to stop trying to overturn the election's results. But I think it also moves Jared Kushner closer to being a member of the criminal conspiracy. And I think last night, it sort of upped the ante with respect to seeing Jared Kushner as a defendant in the conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. And let's not forget those pardons, because those pardons are going to make a comeback and they're going to become a central focus in a criminal case. Because if you committed crimes and you needed pardons, Jared was there to help facilitate that. Not to run on, but I was so excited when I saw the reporting about Kellyanne Conway's book that she said Donald Trump ambled up to her at the end of his term and said, and I'm going to use Trump's word as reported by Kellyanne Conway, if these aren't alternative facts Kellyanne was giving us. She said, Donald Trump said, hey, honey, you want a pardon? Everybody needs one.
Yeah.
And she said, I said, I didn't commit a crime, Mr. President, so I will politely decline. He's like, nah, just take one. She said she didn't.
God.
But what does that tell us,
Yeah.
Jody? You know he gave pardons to his family members.
Absolutely.
If
Yeah.
he's offering them unsolicited to people like Kellyanne Conway. So these pocket pardons, these corruptly delivered pardons, are going to become a focus, I believe, in the coming weeks.
Wow. See, more news. Let's make it Mediaite. All
Yeah,
right.
let's break this news.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kirschner, for coming on, and I look forward to meeting you next month when you're in studio.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see you guys.
All right.
Breakfast is on me. And like I say, first cup of coffee, comped. I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Glenn.
Bye.